Hello there, Reason people, Pooh Bear here, and welcome to my channel. And today's presentation is going to be slightly different because this is actually to do with the Reasontalk virtual basis competition, which I won a couple of weeks ago, and they want to do an interview. And as I don't like doing writing, I thought I'd do a video for them. Hang on 1 second. Oh, there we go, I'm back. As I said, it's to do with these virtual bases, and what I'm going to go through today is the actual track, what you heard playing at the very beginning, very quick chat about the virtual bases themselves, and I'll even talk about Magic. So Magic, this program here, what you can see running, and actually, you know, that mouth is moving to me. So that's one of the things I love about Magic itself, is it's real time. We can do stuff real time with it. And that includes, I've got this conch set up here with this EMI, so it means I can actually send out my drum beats, or MIDI should I say, or the CC data straight into Magic and control things. I can also send audio. This is running on audio. Yeah, so it is a very magical program, and it's well worth it. And if you ever think about getting Magic, you have to buy the more expensive version, which isn't that expensive, $80 or something like that. It's called the studio version, because that accepts the MIDI, whereas the slightly cheaper version doesn't. Oh, it disappeared. So here we go. We've got these virtual basses from Ujam. Their interfaces are very, very clean, and they give out a very nice, clean kind of bass sound. The funny thing was when I actually saw this competition up on Reasontalk, there wasn't that many days left, and I actually had an idea for a track anyway. However, that track, as you heard, it was more of an 80s type theme, and it was definitely more of a electronic, I wouldn't call it synthwave, but it was definitely more of that sort of style. And I thought, I'm not sure if these basses would actually even fit into that particular style. But I was actually quite wrong. The sounds I got out of that roll was actually rather nice. As I say, the interfaces are they're all the same, and they are quite simple. You have two modes. You have a player mode and you have an instrument mode. It'll help if I actually click on the actual right screen so we can actually see it changing. In the player mode, obviously you've got a number of phrases or riffs which you can actually choose from. There's some common ones and there's some more style related ones, and then you have a whole bunch of styles which you can actually select from. One of the funny things was I had this device, well, I'd say how many hours I actually had it for, and then I suddenly realised that this is actually another little extra button here, which is quite a nice one, because there you get your things like some timing, some swings and some feels, and so you can actually make some of these phrases sound quite a bit different. And over the other side there was something to do with your key. Let's just set your key up there. But I will admit, most of the time I actually run mine in box standard instrument mode, and I think they worked quite well, and you will be hearing that a little bit more again later on. So let's have a look at some of the instruments I actually used during this particular track. And in fact, before we go there, here's my first little tip what I like to give out to people. I see a number of times on forums when people actually post up their video of their Reason track, and they've done obviously a little YouTube video of Reason itself. You get a number of people who comment back and saying, hey, set your thumbnails for your VSTs. In my particular case, I'd say to you, don't set your thumbnails. Yeah, your VSTs have got to earn their badge. That's the way I look at it. I will not set my thumbnail or give them a badge until they've been used in a track. And as you can see, I've got VSTs here which I've never used in a track, and really I suppose now I've had, obviously when Reason 9.5 come out, I should really start now going through and start removing some of the old VSTs, because there is definitely VSTs there I'm never going to use. They've either come down in a bundle or they've been free. I mean, the other day I happened to thought, I wonder what EQs I've got available, and I actually found a whole bunch of EQs I never knew. They're all soft tube ones. Never even knew I had them. That came down in a bundle, and yeah. So that's why I say to people, don't set your thumbnails. Wait until you've actually used them, set your thumbnails, and then you can see, like in a year's time, what you have used and what you haven't used. And if anything, when I'm writing my next track, I might say, actually, I am going to try and use that instrument. I will try and put it in. I will try and do something with it. So let's actually have a quick look at some of the instruments I actually used. I've used a couple of really, really old instruments, one called Equinox. It is an old instrument. One of the things I like about this instrument is it's got an absolutely massive interface, and you've got to have an extremely large monitor. Sorry, it's opened up on the other screen, so let me pull it over. And you've got to have an extremely large monitor really to use it. One of the big things that drawed me to Reason, going back to version 1, was the wiring and the way really the rack works, but it was the fact that you could see all the controls at once on the screen. One of the things that bugs me with the modern day rack extensions which come out are the panels. It does bug me. This is what I like to see. I like to see everything at once. And as I say, when I first saw Reason, I thought, great, because when you've got your synths, menu diving all the time. Yeah, I just found that a little bit annoying. And so this may look like, oh, we've got absolutely tons going on. This synth actually is still quite a very small synth. Any subtractive synth, the main thing you need to control is really your cutoff and getting your envelopes right around your cutoff. You know, that's what you really are doing. That's the essence of them. And so in this particular synth, all the rest of this stuff, this just happens to be like a mod matrix at the top. This is like all your effects, and you can just see them all at once, and just a few bit of step data is going on here. And okay, this does have a little bit of morphing to go with some of the oscillators. But it is actually it's an old synth, very straightforward, and yeah, it was a synth that I was playing around with, and came up with this sound. And really, this is where the song came from, was actually playing with this particular synth, and we'll actually have a little bit closer look at that when I fire up that other project. So I've used an Equinox and the P8. The P8 happens to be a freebie by the same people. I used Eden for doing the drums, which was quite nice, and obviously I used a Royal and a Rowdy as well. So a Rody. Also got a Radical piano in there. There was the good old harmonizer and a Predator and a Zero, and at the very end a Denon XT, which I just happened to use that for the vocals. I happened to have a vocal pack, so I pulled out some slightly different vocals for that. So that's basically the instruments I really use for it. And a lot of these, especially these last lot, there's paired up just to give a little bit of what I refer to as my sparkle sounds in the background. It was really all around these sort of key instruments. I tell you what, actually, instrument I have got missing there, I did actually use a Massive, but the Massive wasn't what I could have. I was actually using a Thor to start with. But the Massive gave me just a slightly different edge on the sound, which I thought, yeah, that's what I wanted. But the reason I'm smiling is I didn't use half the functionality within Massive. It was a very, very, very basic patch, but it gave me the sound what I was actually after. So let's actually pop in and have a look at the project as a whole, and as this one piece. This project did get a little bit messy because it got slapped together extremely quickly. Now, a little disclaimer, I've never claimed myself to be a musician. Yes, when I was younger, I did do some gigs and that, but I still don't think of myself as a musician. I don't even think of myself as a music producer, to be perfectly honest. You could call me a Reason technician. That's what I love. I love the back end stuff. That's what I love to do. I just love playing around with the back end and just wiring stuff up. That's where I get my kicks from, really. So in the mixer area, you may notice that there's a number of sort of graphite colour channels, and what these are if I'm doing any kind of volume automation, I will make its own bus for that particular purpose. And the main reason I do it is if at any stage I just want to tweak that bass level, it means I can tweak the bass level and I don't have to touch any of that automation. 9 times out of 10, you don't have to revisit that automation. Whereas if I had this automated and I suddenly thought, actually I want to go and take it all down by X amount, well, either I need to go and change all that automation, or I need to then route it to another bus and I can then bring it down there. But I've done it, and that's why I do it, and I always have it as a graphite colour, so I know instantly when I'm looking at my mixer, graphite colour means, yeah, I've got some automation going on that particular channel. And I do tend to sort of bust things up and give in the way I do my grouping. As I say, this particular rack isn't messy. I did think about tidying up and I thought, oh no, I might as well show it how I actually did really use it. One thing you're going to notice I do use a lot with my tracks is this good old MIDI CV converter. When the first came out, there was a players competition, which I've done quite well in as well, and I demonstrated the use of that MIDI CV converter, and I actually use it a lot. As you can see, it's here, and in a lot of tracks I use it, and I use it for layering up loads of different sounds. I do make use of players as well. I tend to use players, and I tend to layer loads of stuff up, and then when I'm really happy about how my arrangement's going to be, I rip it all back down again, and then I sort of process it more by hand. But I do like the players. I do find the players extremely handy, and in fact there's a special little player in here at the moment called Delta, which is an absolutely fantastic player. It's in beta at the moment, but it's due out pretty soon. In fact, there's a good chance I won't release this video until that's actually been released anyway. It's best way of describing it is it's like a Swiss Army knife, really, without a doubt. It is brilliant. How people were looking forward to VSTs in Reason, I've been looking forward to this, and I'm going to actually do a video separately on this particular device. It's very deep, and at the same time it's very easy to use. You can use it very lightly, and you can use it very deeply. And yes, so I will do a separate video on that particular one. So as I say, I like to layer things up, and that way I can experiment. And it's all to do with the experimentation, because it's a bit annoying when you think, oh, can I go here with my song, and then you record a bit of the bass, and then you might record some other chords stuff over, or pads over the top, and then you come to do something else, and it's like it's not quite working. When you've got everything layered up, you can just go there. You've got all your bass running, you've got everything running at the same time, and you know instantly if it's going to work, what you need to change. And so it's more to do with the speed thing, and that's what I really like about that at the beginning. So where is my main combinator? So at the moment, if I go to my main combinator, and you'd notice as well, there's a lot of things which get muted and unmuted, and that's because I'm using these MIDI CV converters all over the place, and they're all kind of linked up together. So depending where I actually click in this, obviously in the transport bar, it'll be depending what's being muted and unmuted at the top. And let's see what we've got going on. And as you can see, I'm only just playing the one key. I think I've got some double things going on here. Let's just turn that one off for the moment. Yeah, I think I've got some double stuff going up there. But as I say, the fact that you can get it all playing, and you can play everything at the same time, it really does speed up the process a lot. And you know, and I use these MIDI CV converters all the time. They're absolutely brilliant. So if we actually have a look at some of these virtual basses which I've used, the scales and chords actually is not doing anything at all in this. I'm not even too sure why I actually ended up putting that in, but I did. I'm using Delta here, and that's just actually on this particular machine, it's just giving it a bit of a whoops, quieten you down. So with this particular bass, I was experimenting, so I didn't actually use half these devices. What you can see, I have actually used the delay there, just a simple 21 milliseconds to try and get that bass just that little bit fatter, and then I actually put it through a phaser there, which is giving it a nice kind of wowy sound. And then on top of that, I think I'm using a pulsar. Yes, there it is. There's a pulsar, and I'm using that on the pan to get it to actually go whizzing from side to side. The other funny thing which I'm doing with this, and it's not that obvious to start with, is this EQ down here is actually part of the insert up the top. The reason it's been shifted over into underneath the Royal is because obviously with the colour EQ, and maybe you don't know, they're saying it can actually take in noting and gate data. So even though you can set up your EQ, you can actually shift it around by depending which notes you're playing. So that allows it to be, it's dynamically shifting. So because I've got two basses playing, every now and then they're overlaying. When they're overlaying, I want it to take some of the fundamentals, some of the harmonics out of the rowdy. So when it's crossing over with the royal, it allows me to do that, and then the royal can go up there, this one can go down there, and it's now no longer affecting the main fundamental and harmonics because it's shifting around. So if I was actually highlight this one here, and I'm actually going to turn off that stuff for the moment, because if not it's going to go whizzing off. And as you can see, as I play my keys, it's changing. But this EQ is not affecting the royal at all. It's purely affecting, as I say, the rowdy over there. Now, the royal itself is also using a colour and EQ, but that is using, again, we've got some gate data coming in, which is the kick. So I am obviously just ducking this bass when I've got the kick going. And this over here, because with the royal, that gives off this lovely little twang sound, and that's what I've decided to obviously give a little bit of a boost to. Yeah, so that's what that gives that nice little boost to. So I deliberately sort of pulled that out. As I say, because of that, the way they do overlay, being two bass, I did try and put in their own space, but they do every now and then. And I just really did sort that out so it didn't go totally muddy. Obviously the rad piano and the JPS, they actually run together really. They shouldn't be really run separately, because it's just a straightforward piano sound. And this is quite a weird sound really. It's a preset, it's one of his presets, Deja Vu I think, or something like that. But that sounds quite nice when you're actually, let's just hear it, just them two together with the piano. Yeah, fits in quite well there. Nice simple sound. Again, over here we then got another little background sound coming from the Predator and the Zero. I throw effects in all over the place, and as you can see, they all end up being on bypass. So it's all experimental stuff, and I decided again just to leave it in there because that's how I work. Just to sort of say, look, this is how I work. I throw stuff in, don't necessarily use it. In fact, I am using the space reverb, and I've actually got that set up on send one, so I'm sending a number of things through that. But this was a nice, interesting kind of sort of sound we got out of this. And that sounds. So yeah, so that was quite straightforward, and really, this really sort of covers sort of most of the instruments I've used. You know, the lead, as I say, was very straightforward. Oh, actually, I'll tell you what. There's a little quirky thing I've done with this lead over here, isn't there? So we'll just play it on its own. So one of the things I like to do. One of the things I like to do with instruments, and it's quite funny because I've worked with a number of devs and I get them to implement it, is I like to add aftertouch to the portamento or glide. and obviously with the aid of the combinator, this is something I can actually do with this particular device. So I've got a little bit of aftertouch there, and I'll put it onto the portamento. And the reason it's quite nice to have it on aftertouch is because obviously it means we can have an instrument and we can play it. We can play it fast. Just move it out a bit. And there's no glide. I've deliberately set the glide up, or in fact it's in the combinator I've set it up really high so you can really hear it. So if you're holding a note, you might suddenly think, oh yeah, I just want that bit of glide. So with a little bit of aftertouch, he says, and it's not working because I've got to go via the combinator to get the aftertouch to work. So I just find it a real nice expression way of how you can actually add that, and it's just to say it's just a simple little bit of aftertouch on the glide. I think it works really, really, really well. I think what we should jump into next is maybe have a look at Magic itself, really, because I say Magic is if you're used to the back of the rack, you're going to get on really, really well with Magic. Let me just have a quick double check of this rack, see if there's anything else I was really going to cover in this. I don't think there was, as I say, because it was all quite straightforward stuff going on. Yeah. Yeah, all quite straightforward stuff going on. Now, to answer a couple of the questions from Reasontalk themselves as well. This particular track I wrote in a few hours. I probably spent more time setting up the CV MIDI stuff and just setting some bits and bobs up, and then, as I say, because you've got everything at your fingertips, you can really experiment. You can get things out very, very quickly. So yeah, it took a few hours probably to get from the initial thing and actually laid out. As I say, then I strip everything out and then I actually end up writing it. So within 24 hours, most of the legwork was really, really done. And as I was writing it, don't ask me why, but the thing what came into my head was the band. And this is obviously a Blues Brothers quote. And that's when my thoughts started to come together about the video. I'm very visual and musical at the same time, you know, things like Queen of Glasgow and things like that. I absolutely love that type of thing. So, you know, Jean-Michel Jarre, obviously, he had a big influence on me, especially when I was a nipper, when I was younger. Because, I was quite in my teenage years when he was coming out with all his big stuff. And without a doubt, I'm very influenced by the 80s, especially the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So people like OMD, Gary Newman, obviously Human League. You can go from Depeche Mode, then you might as well talk about Yazoo and Erasure there, Eurythmics. The list would go on as well. Pet Shop Boys, Heaven 17. So all that kind of stuff really did have quite an effect on me. And the final, I wouldn't say big three, but Kraftwerk. Funny enough, when I was actually very, very young, yeah, I remember Computer World coming out, great album. But I wasn't like a big fan of theirs. I don't think it's till like the mid-90s when Autobahn really started to click with me, and I actually like that album quite a lot now. A lot of the Jean-Michel Jarre stuff, I was lucky enough to see him in Docklands when he done that Dockland concert, and Tangerine Dream. Really, Tangerine Dream are one of these funny bands. I think I've got about 65 of their albums. You know, they've been around since the 60s and that. But my father was actually quite big into music, so he introduced me to Tangerine Dream, actually, is one of the things, but obviously he introduced me to all the other big bands as well, and I'm talking about Pink Floyd and that side of it from the 60s, obviously, and Alan Parsons and all sorts of other things. So I've had quite a lot of influence with music as a background, but I've never actually done any music theory. I can't read music. Everything I've learned really is all been done by ear. I'm not trying to say, hey, look, I'm clever. That's why I say I'm not a musician. I've never claimed to be a musician. I do think of myself as a technical background. And that's really what my work role's been. Yeah, I rehab dogs now. That's what I actually do now for a living. I train dogs and I rehab dogs. But I also spent 30 odd years in the IT industry. You know, I spent 10 years working at Microsoft. I've worked for Compaq. I've worked for IBM. I've worked for HP. So I've worked for all the sort of big companies doing sort of programming and that side of things. And really, most of my job roles was actually supporting people and giving people that third line support when they really got stuck. And I think that's just obviously rolled over into the groups and my channel here. So anyway, let's just jump straight into magic. And as I say, if you really are into, let's see if I can get rid of that screen there. Yeah, I can. And I might be able to even zoom that one up. No. Hey, it zoomed up a bit anyway. So magic, it's all about separate little modules which you can sort of bolt together, and they all do different things, and you have loads of different parameters which you can set as well. Start with, like anything else, when you very first start looking at some of the programs, they look quite complex, and the nice thing about magic is you can keep everything in little subroutines as well, so you don't have to have one big project. So I break things down into loads of little projects, and then you can just start stringing these things together, and it makes a lot more sense of how it actually follows and how it actually works. So on this particular one, this is actually my robot. So if I drag this over here, so this is like my body, I've got my head's stuff here, and then we can go into the head more specifically. So here's the head. This bit here is actually doing the mouth, so I can turn the mouth off. So there's the mouth, it's no longer there, there it is. We control some of the eyes up here. There we go, I can make myself wink. So we've got the eyes up there. So it's very, very straightforward stuff. And in fact, let's actually pull this up here. If I put that there. And I think I've got myself a mic wired up into this. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually grab myself a quite straightforward waveform, and there we go. There's me talking, a nice straightforward waveform. And the next thing I wanted to quickly do to that is just add a little bit of colour. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually give it the colour is going to control the volume of my voice. So if I'm very quiet, it's going to be one colour. And if I go high pitched, very high pitched, we can get it to do different colours as well. But this is how you build it up. You just come along and go, right, I've put that in there now, I'm going to put that in there now. What else am I going to put in there now? I think trails always work really, really well with this sort of stuff. So I'm going to put them up. And as you can start seeing, it's now really getting thicker and doing some different stuff there. A bit of blur, that always comes in handy. And I'm not talking about the band either. So that's looking even a little bit wilder there. And then let's kaleidoscope that. And if we actually put a kaleidoscope on that, we get ourselves quite a nice wicked little pattern going. In fact, we can turn the kaleidoscope up or down. That might look a little bit better there. So yes, and it's just about fine tuning some of these parameters. So you can have it too blurry, it's not going to look quite right. Don't have enough blur, you can make it look sharp. And more importantly, as I say, I can change that. So the blurriness is now coming down to the actual volume. But you're not just left with audio. You can purely control all of this as well using MIDI. So obviously it can be notes, and it can also be CC data, and you can control it straight from Reason as well. And I do a lot of controlling of this stuff. As you saw when I was actually playing, you saw my keyboard playing. That was actually going via Reason, and I was using the EMI, which is sending it out to Magic to obviously then play the notes. So, and I like Magic because you can do things, as I say, live. So we're looking at this live. When it comes down to doing the final project of, especially when I was doing, when I put my band together, as I said, I took all my stems what I needed. So, and I took a lot of MIDI out. So some things like all the kicks and the snares, that was all MIDI driven. The keyboards were mainly MIDI driven, whereas the basses with the guy playing the bass guitars, that was audio driven. What you've got to think about, what you think about is what are you doing to the parameter, as in MIDI is either quite on or off, we do have a bit of velocity, but it's basically saying this is the value, this is the value. It's quite harsh. Whereas audio, as you can see, this going absolutely mad and doing different things can be slightly better. As in, if I hit a MIDI note, I can just hit a MIDI note like that. That's it, on and off. But I could have a real long release on that particular device, so the sound is still going even though I really hit that note fast. So that's where the audio side comes in quite handy, and it worked quite well for the strumming of the guitar because of the audio. If it was MIDI, his hand had just gone down and back up again very quickly, but because of the audio, it'd be a boom, and it just makes it a bit more smoother. So you've got your choice of how you actually control stuff within Magic. It can either be audio, can be MIDI, CC data, which is MIDI, and it really is an easy application to use. I'm no graphic expert, and as I say, if you're used to the back of the rig, you're going to absolutely love this. This is so, it's just, you just put things together. You can make these very complex, and that particular Magic project did get extremely complex. But if I was to make that today, I know I'd make it slightly differently and make it a lot easier for myself. But it's one of them things, I suppose it's a bit like when you're doing stuff in Reason itself, especially with wiring, and anyone's done a generative project, I think you know what I'm talking about. You just start adding and adding and adding. You think, I just add this on here, rather than doing things a little bit cleanly, and you just start building up, and things just go out of control. And then you look at it a few months later and you think, oh my god, how did I ever wire this up in the first place? But, well, it's like anything really in racks, VCR racks and all the rest of it. You just end up putting it together, and at the time it makes logical sense, and then say 3 months later you look at it and you're thinking, what did I do that, and how did I do that, and why did I do that? So this has been my Reason Talk interview. Yeah, as usual, I go into a waffle, but that's me. I hope you found 1 or 2 little tips out of it useful, and well, thank you for watching, and bye for now.